nature and looking at health that is common among all primitive people all over the world. I used that term the other night, and somebody pulled me up on it, primitive. So I want to explain what I mean by that. And what I mean by primitive is culture when it's in a state of close relationship with nature and environment, right? And where technology does not rule, right? No, so for me, primitive cultures are cultures that have learned how to live in harmony with nature, and where the technologies that they do develop help them to move into closer relationship with their environment and with nature, and don't get in the way. Something that we don't acknowledge a lot is that there are many places in the world right now where there are tribal peoples, indigenous people, that stay the way they are, not because they don't know about the benefits of the modern world, but because they do know about it and they don't want to be involved. Right? Okay. You know, and we keep relentlessly pursuing them, right, and showing them that there would be great benefits to having toys, right, that they could use, and they're going, no, 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 and they keep retreating into jungle areas or wherever they live. In fact, it was something, I have to tell you, I will digress all the time, so don't become frustrated with me, okay? I do remember where I left off, right? Okay, when I was in junior high school, there was a gentleman that came and gave a slide presentation and a show to an assembly. And his last name was Ball. I think it was Edwin Ball. The way I remember him is because he had an actor, a brother who was a very good Shakespearean actor who I saw a couple of years later play Hamlet. One of the best Hamlets I ever saw. Right? But I digress within that digression. So this man was an anthropologist, and he had just returned from the Amazon basin, up at the heads of the Amazon in the jungle, and he had studied two tribes, right, that were separated by a huge waterfall. There was one tribe that was at the bottom of this waterfall, and then the other tribe lived way up in the mountain on top of the waterfall. And when the first explorers had come into the Amazon, the boats only went up to the waterfall, because this was the mother of all waterfalls. This was like huge, and the only way you could get up was by scaling these cliffs to the top. So nobody did it. So the missionaries only came up to the waterfall, right? And the tribe was split. There was the tribe at the bottom and the tribe at the top were actually the same tribe. It was just that they lived in different neighborhoods, right? And they used to get together once a year, twice a year on special occasions, and you know, they would work out their gene pool, and you know, and all the rest of it, and you know, and trade things, and this was a tradition. Well, he visited the tribe at the bottom of the waterfall first, and took a lot of pictures of them and did interviews with the people through an interpreter, and then they scaled the cliff and they interviewed the people at the top and took pictures. And he was so shocked when he came back after having this experience that he started touring around with a slideshow, and it was a split screen slideshow. And every aspect of these people's life he showed on two different screens. One was the top of the waterfall and the other was the bottom. And the thing that was most striking to me was that when he got to the point where where the young men went through a rite of passage. And the rite of passage used to be that when a young man was, I don't know, 13 or whatever it was, about that period of time as usual among people all over the world for young men and young women to go through rites of passage. They would send the young man out into the forest on his own, and he would have to kill an animal, right? And then when he killed the animal, he would bring it back and present it to the tribe, and they would eat the animal, they would use the animal, and he would get to keep the teeth of the animal, and he would make a necklace out of them, and they were there. And sometimes it was like a monkey, you know. It wasn't a huge, for those of you that are vegans, I'm sorry, but this is life, right? And sometimes it was a monkey, and there was just a couple of little teeth, you know. And sometimes it was something bigger, and you know, and bigger teeth. And he had pictures of these young men at the top of the waterfall, all standing there, and they had a couple of little teeth, you know, and they were all smiling, big smiles, lots of white teeth, right? You know, and standing proud, you know, that they were young men. And then he had pictures of the boys at the bottom of the waterfall. And the missionaries had brought in plastic teeth. and given them to the boys, and the boys had strings of plastic teeth around their neck, and the smiles were filled with gaps in the mouth where the teeth had rotted out because their food had changed. They were no longer living off the jungle. They were living off of supplies that were being brought up the river, and these boys looked so sad. And those two slides are embedded in my head from when I was about 13, 14 years old, right? And that image is a very powerful image about what happens in terms of primitive. So primitive for me is the top of the waterfall, right? No, and modern is the bottom of the waterfall. And so when we talk about primitive people all over the world having an influence on macrobiotics, what I mean is that they saw that there's a relationship between ourselves and the environment, and that they use the information of their experience and their tribal experience back generations to govern their life. Right? This is what works, this is what doesn't work. See, and this is what perhaps our grandparents, great-grandparents' generation still had a piece of. When I got sick when I was a kid, it was my grandmothers on both sides who had a competition to see who could like make up the right soup or the right stuff to put on me, you know, salves and things like that, that would bring about the great healing. Right? And I remember being totally afraid of one of my grandmothers because she used to make this crap in the kitchen, which was like always yellow for some reason. I don't know why it was always yellow. It was always yellow, and anytime you had anything that happened to your skin, you got this slapped on you, and it stank and it was yellow, and it worked. Right? Okay. So those kind of influences are there.